Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Scott McCandless. It is the week of February 20th, and this is your Monday briefing. The House and Senate will be in recess this week for President's Day. Both chambers are scheduled to reconvene the week of February 27th. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen this week will travel to India to participate in meetings with G20 finance ministers and central bank governors. President Biden on March 9 will send his FY 2024 budget proposals to Congress. The Treasury Department's Green Book explanation of the president's revenue proposals also is expected to be released on that date. Treasury has made it clear that the climate tax incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act are a priority. And joining us today to discuss the significance of recent guidance and the likely timing for future guidance is Ann Andrews. Ann, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Scott. It's nice to see you.
And two notices came out last week regarding energy community bonus credits and the Section 48C credit. Can you discuss the significance of this guidance and give us your best sense of timing of future guidance?
Sure. Thanks so much for asking, Scott. So I think what's important to remember here is that under the Inflation Reduction Act, there was a requirement that Treasury actually issue guidance continuing to clarify and define sort of technical matters as well as procedural matters to help taxpayers be able to take advantage of the investment tax credits that were available. One of the things that was required was that there were certain time limitations associated with some of those. And these two notices that came out last week are actually in response to that. There was a 180-day limitation in terms of when Treasury needed to provide guidance associated with both the definition and application of when taxpayers could take advantage of the low income community kicker associated with the Section 48 credit for wind and solar, as well as when taxpayers could, or how they would go about, I should say, applying for the Qualified Advanced Energy Project credit under Section 48C. So both of these notices are really in response to that. And I think that, they both contain quite a bit of great information, not necessarily as much great information as we'd like. And specific to your question, Scott, at least under the Section 48C program in Notice 2023-18, there's specific information that says that more guidance will be coming by May 31st. There's just a couple of things to note. I won't go through all the details of what each of these things say, but it is important to understand that both programs do require applications. Both programs do have limitations. They're different. The low-income communities have a limitation in terms of how many megawatts they're going to fund, or I guess how many megawatts can be produced with alternative energy that would be eligible for that 10% or 20% kicker associated with low-income communities, tribal communities, low-income residential housing projects, and so forth. The Section 48C credit has a $10 billion cap in the aggregate related to that credit. And Notice 2023-18 really provides information associated with the first $4 billion and how one would go about applying for that. What's most probably important for our clients and, quite frankly, any taxpayer to understand is that the window period for that application opens on May 31st and it closes on July 31st. So there's going to be a 60-day window period, but you've got a little bit of lead time right now.
And with regard to further guidance, Assistant Secretary for Tax Policy Lily Batchelder at a recent American Bar Association conference invited stakeholders to weigh in on these and other guidance issues. Are you encouraging companies to take Treasury up on this offer?
Absolutely. A lot of people think, Scott, that because of the 9 notices that came out last October, I guess it was September and October, where there was a request for comments, and there were absolutely comment periods that were listed in those notices, that they don't really have an opportunity to provide comments. And that's just simply not true. Treasury and IRS are encouraging taxpayers to continue to provide comments, and they have indicated not just an openness, but an interest in receiving those and reading those and incorporating those, except to the extent where it holds up their issuance of guidance. And so I think it's really important for companies to continue to that's the mechanism by which they can ask those questions. It's a little hard to get a meeting right now because there is so much stuff that Treasury and IRS have to contend with at the moment. And so I think that it's a great way of, getting your comments in there. You're not going to get a specific answer, but hopefully at this point, but you hopefully are getting an opportunity to weigh in on the type of guidance that's being provided.
And Ann, I'm curious about the perspective from the company's side, because these incentives are really quite robust. Are you finding significant interest in them in the marketplace?
Absolutely, and not necessarily in the most obvious of places. I mean, clearly these are most of them are, climate credits. Certainly we have a lot to do with manufacturing as well, but, it's the generation of alternative or of power through alternative energy. It's decarbonization of manufacturing. You would frequently think that you're going to be seeing most of the energy companies that are interested in this, and certainly they are. But what we're seeing is that there is a wide array of players that are interested in these credits and interested in the variety of these credits, because so many of them can apply, even though it wouldn't necessarily be obvious that they would apply to you.
And finally, Ann, thinking about eligible taxpayers, they can monetize these incentives in various forms as well, such as through direct pay or transferability. Can you comment on some of the planning options that taxpayers may have?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the big things about the Inflation Reduction Act, was the inclusion of this transferability, direct pay, expanded direct pay that allows taxpayers to be able to monetize these credits in a way that they hadn't been able to before. So one of the interesting things that we're seeing right now is really sort of the very early stages of the emergence of transferability markets, for example. We haven't really seen a whole lot in the way of markets. I think I heard somebody say earlier today that it was sort of 95% enthusiasm and 5% action at the moment. But there is a lot of enthusiasm about it. There certainly is a lot of planning. I am aware of some marketplaces that are being built, and that where there's going to be an opportunity for taxpayers that generate credits, or companies that generate credits, even if they're not taxpayers, that generate credits and want to transfer or sell those credits, and companies that want to buy those credits to be able to come together and do that. There are some early stage term sheets. I haven't seen any, where you might be able to get a glance at what it's looking like in terms of what the discount rate might be. But there is also, there's also some guidance that we need associated with this, because Treasury and IRS need to help companies understand what it is going to look like for, traceability purposes. So if a credit is sold, then the taxpayer who acquires that credit is going to have to contend with examination issues and recapture issues and all those sorts of things. And what does that look like, given that they weren't the one that actually generated the credit? Lots of interest in direct pay. Interestingly, I thought that we would sort of see tax equity go by the wayside. That is not the case. There's definitely still a lot of comparison going on there. So a lot of interest in thinking through how to monetize these credits, which was the intention. So that's great.
And that's great. Thank you so much for this wealth of information. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Be sure to check out the latest Week in Review with Mark Prater, included in the description of this episode, and stay tuned for this Friday's Week in Review. As always, thank you for spending this time with us. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.